Oh, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and others who shall remain nameless. Oh, yeah. Hey, yeah, so it's me, and I'm downtown again. This might be becoming a bit of a theme, actually, but no, I wanted to talk about the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. You know, that crown corporation that we all as Canadian citizens collectively own, and which the Conservatives want to privatize and sell to an American buyer that they've already got lined up and that they've had lined up for quite some time. And pocket the profits. Yeah, once again, the Conservatives are selling what belongs to us and pocketing the profits. And, Polyev is really gung-ho to make that sale. He really wants to make that sale. I remember great Canadian TV shows from the 70s and 80s that were made back when even the Conservatives understood the value of having Canadian content on Canadian television. And there were great shows like The Beachcombers and great educational programming like Passepartout. And there were great docudramas as well as historical dramas that explored the history of our country and served the purpose of educating a younger generation as to who we actually are and reminding them that we are not Americans. And then the Conservatives gutted the CBC. And as a result, Canadian television is flooded with American media in which Canada is portrayed not even as an afterthought, but as sort of a running joke. The bumbling Mountie in New York, who is astonished by things like electricity and indoor plumbing. Is that the image of Canada that we want to show our children? Really, honestly. Because it's the image of Canada that the Conservatives want to show our children. And with American propaganda taking a much more, how shall we say, violent turn, what with their open threats of annexation, invasion, military action against Canada, the underfunded CBC is honestly not able to do its job, which is standing up for Canada. So whose voices are we hearing? Well, we're hearing Tucker Carlson and Matt Walsh and other American right-wing media figures who are talking about how good it will be to invade Canada and, quote, liberate, unquote, Canada from the communists, as if we've ever had communists in office in this country. I think the last communist we had in office was Tommy Douglas, who was deputy premier, I think, at one point in Manitoba or something like that. Otherwise, we've never had a communist in office. But American propaganda is nothing if not prolific and heavily oversaturated in Canada. So yeah, the CBC is not owned by the government. It's owned by us, the people. We own the CBC collectively as Canadians. And if the Conservatives sell it, which they want to do, they're not going to give us the proceeds. They're going to keep that to themselves because they've done that whenever they have sold a Canadian crown corporation to a foreign, American, private corporate interest. And they've done that a lot. But yes, the CBC belongs to us, and the programming, television and radio, has been a reflection of Canada as a separate and distinct country, a diverse culture, and yes, a country that for all its flaws, for all its failings, for all its shortcomings, is still better than the Americans could ever hope to get their country simply because we are a country that is willing to look at our failings and say, yeah, okay, we need to fix that. So yeah, when conservatives and conservative supporters say that the CBC is government-controlled television and government-controlled radio and that it's liberal propaganda, yeah, no, it isn't. The CBC is, again, our heritage as a country. And yeah, don't you ever get tired of American media portraying Canada as not a real country? Are you starting to get a little tired of the Americans threatening to invade us and make us the 51st state? Because if the answer to either of those questions is yes, you need to support the CBC. Unfortunately, and this is very unfortunate, American far-right media has flooded Canada with a lot of anti-Canadian propaganda. And a lot of that anti-Canadian propaganda has become the official talking points of the Federal Conservative Party of Canada and of the Alberta Provincial Conservative Party of Canada. Yeah. When your other federal political party and a major provincial political party are both using hostile foreign propaganda as their official source for their stance on the country, there's a problem. And the sad reality is, that problem is that the Conservatives have defunded the CBC to the point where far too many Canadians are raised with nothing but American media, and they never learn that Canada is in fact a real country with our own history, our own heritage, our own culture, and our own traditions. Instead, they learn to think that they are Americans, and then when they discover that they are not Americans, they are disappointed. Yeah. There is an old story. A Russian agent and an American agent are sitting down at a table together, and the Russian agent turns to the American and says, "In our country, we know when we're being spoon-fed propaganda by the government, whereas you Americans have no idea that you are being spoon-fed propaganda." To which the American replies, "But we are not spoon-fed propaganda." And the Russian looks at him with a sad expression and says, "See, that's exactly my fucking point. You have no fucking clue that you're being propagandized." Which brings me to the issue of America flooding Canada with American propaganda. The CBC is not propaganda. It never has been. It is not left-wing, it is not left-leaning. It is very, very centrist. It is generally politically neutral, except when it leans in the direction of slight conservatism. It is certainly not a liberal publication, and it is definitely not left of liberal. Yeah, it's not. The CBC is just classic Canadian. And no, it is not communist propaganda, it is not left-wing propaganda, it is not even liberal propaganda. It's just honest Canadian journalism without the American propaganda slant. So, yeah, I can see why some Canadians would think it's propaganda. The complete lack of American propaganda is often mistaken for propaganda by people who grew up with American propaganda. So the question is, do we want quality Canadian programming that reflects Canadian heritage, Canadian history, and Canadian interests, or do we want American propaganda? And I think the answer should be that we want Canadian programming and Canadian heritage. We need to support Canadian screenwriters and not be sending them south to America to work in Hollywood, creating American Hollywood blockbusters. We need to start making our own Canadian blockbusters. And we need to have a movie producing system in this country that is not dependent upon Hollywood. We need to bring back United Empire loyalism and Canadian patriotism to the masses. Because unfortunately, the Americans have so heavily Americanized us with their propaganda that a lot of Canadians are forgetting who we are. And the Conservatives, by defunding the CBC, and the Liberals, by not fighting them on it, have really gone to great lengths to help the Americans to de-Canadianize Canada. And as with so many things wrong in this country, it is patriotic to fix what is broken rather than either abandoning it or pretending that it's not a problem. And I've mentioned this in many of my Canada Day videos, how Canada is a work in progress, and that we are not perfect, and that we acknowledge that we are not perfect, and that we are a country that is working to be a little better every day, a country that acknowledges its mistakes, its past blunders, errors, and yes, even horrific atrocities. Residential schools, anyone? Yeah. We're a country that tries to make itself better. We're a country trying to improve itself. And yes, in American propaganda, that is treated as being disloyal, because in American propaganda, one's country is perfect or unfit to exist. There is no effort made to improve oneself. One is either perfect, as Americans claim themselves to be, or one deserves to be killed, as America claims everybody else is. Yeah. And that's the shit that's flooding our country and influencing Canadian youth. My question is, do we really want that shit flooding our country? Do we really want that kind of bullshit? And the answer is no. So therefore, we do need to continue funding the CBC and to restore funding so the CBC can once again produce television broadcasts that are reflective of Canadiana. Oh yeah. Anywho, good to be home. And on the CBC, as I pointed out, the CBC does not belong to the government of Canada. It belongs to the people of Canada. That's you and me. You, and you all collectively own it, along with me. We all own the CBC. So when the Conservatives talk about selling the CBC to a private corporation, they're talking about stealing from us. And no, the CBC is not controlled by any one political party, owned by any one political party, and is certainly not the spokesmedia for any one Canadian party. Rather, the CBC gives equal coverage to everybody, Liberal, Conservative, NDP, Communist, whatever. Equal footage, equal opportunity to speak and be heard. Yeah. Hell, the CBC even allows Maple MAGA to hog the airwaves, to hog Canadian airwaves. And I mean, Maple MAGA does not belong in Canada. We're talking about people who, yes, let's call them what they are. Bunch of fucking traitors, okay? You want to be an American? You know where the border is. It's way down there. Go south. Keep going south until there's no more public health care. Keep going south until you can no longer afford your medication, okay? Yeah. Keep going south until you cannot afford the medical treatment that you need to survive. And then tell us how terrible it is in Canada, okay? Go ahead. But yes, the CBC is an important part of our Canadian heritage. Kind of like the railways that the Conservatives sold to an American company. Kind of like the Canadian Wheat Board that the Conservatives sold to a Saudi company that was partially owned by Americans. Yeah, kind of like how they sold the Canadian Research Company to an American investment company. And the way that they've sold Ontario Place and the Ontario Science Centre and so much else that is Canadian and beautiful. They've sold it to foreign, see American, corporate interests. They're eagerly bulldozing it to build resort hotels for American tourists. Eh. But yes, the CBC, just like our public health care, is part of Canada, and it needs to be adequately funded. And the traitors / conservatives have been defunding everything. Yeah. You ever wonder why these people have invested so heavily in American corporate interests? Good question. Yeah. Very good question. Yeah. You ever wonder why so many high-level conservative politicians own real estate in Texas and Oklahoma? Good question. Very good question. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, we owe it to ourselves to protect the CBC. We owe it to ourselves to protect our heritage as Canadians. We owe it to ourselves to make sure that people like Pierre Poilievre understand that the border is that way and that they should just keep going until they can no longer afford the medication that they need to be able to live. Yeah. It bears repeating. You want to be an American? There's the border. Go. But the CBC stays. And we do need to rebuild the Canadian Research Corporation. We do need to rebuild Ontario Place and the Ontario Science Centre. We do need to rebuild all these things that the Conservatives have scrapped and gotten rid of. And in many cases, we're going to have to start at the beginning. We also have to reopen the planetarium at the Royal Ontario Museum. We need to do that. I think we can afford to shut down a few of Mike the Knife's golf courses in order to finance the restoration and restarting of the planetarium. I went to the planetarium once back in the 70s. It was great. We need to bring this back because it's Canadian. And it's educational, and it's fun. We need to remember who we are as Canadians. And we need to remember that even though Canada is not perfect, the truth is no country is perfect. But one of the things that separates us from the Americans, who Maple MAGA wants to drag us into being, one of the things that separates them from us is the fact that we recognize that we are imperfect. We are a flawed country. We have problems. We've made mistakes. We have blundered badly. And we are working on fixing that. Because we see Canada not as already perfect, but as a work in progress. that we need to keep working at until it gets a little better. And perfection is not something that we will achieve. It is something that we will strive for. Unlike the Americans, who have already decided that they have achieved perfection, and they don't think that they need to strive for anything. I miss the old CBC. And most people of my generation miss the old CBC. Most people of my parents' generation miss the old CBC. Being able to listen to the hockey game, Hockey Night in Canada, on the CBC. Being able to get Canadian news on the CBC. And yes, during Canadian news broadcasts on television, occasionally Canadian musicians were brought in and given a chance to shine on the Canadian spotlight. In the middle of a news broadcast. Come on, folks. When the news, weather, and sports was Canadian and not discount American. Let's protect the CBC. Let's protect our heritage as Canadians. And let's remind Donald J. Trump that yes, Justin Trudeau did boink Melania Trump in Paris in 2017. And she liked it. And this makes Justin Trudeau the second Canadian Prime Minister named Trudeau to have banged the wife of a sitting American president. Oh yeah. Hi, Nancy. How was Pierre? Yeah. How was Pierre? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's just remind Diaper Donnie and Pierre Poilievre that Canada is its own country, and we do not want or need to be Americans. There's a border. And on the north of it, we have something called the CBC. And universal public health care, and good food, and high standards, and prime ministers who fuck the wives of American presidents. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And the CBC mocks and ridicules all politicians. Liberal, Canadian, NDP, whatever. It's not the CBC's fault that the Conservatives are just that much dumber and more treasonous than the Liberals. Maybe if the Conservatives became a little less bloody awful, the CBC could mock them a little bit less. Yeah. Anywho, vive le Canada! And bonsoir.